Disclaimer. To the Pharisees and Karens out there.
How dare you!
All guests on this show do not reflect the opinions of the host. The purpose of this show is to have interesting conversations, stretch our minds, and grow.
Not what we want!
If you are looking for an echo chamber, viewer and listener discretion
is advised.
You talk about extreme.
What is happening and what is up? Hold out your glass, because we're about to fill it up.
Join us as we travel and explore the vast unknown. It's a hero's journey with dragons to slay, damsels to save, and innumerable treasures to hoard. Torches high.
Look at it from a different perspective.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of the Unfiltered Rise with me, Heidi Luv. And today I have a reoccurring guest and a friend of mine, Doc Brown. How you doing today?
Hey, Heidi, I'm doing great. Thank you for having me.
I'm so excited. Yeah, I'm so excited to talk about why you're back, because you wrote a book. You wrote a book, The Epic of Esau, The Birthright and Seed War, right?
Yeah. I know.
Cool.
Kind of did like a little tour and was going on some of my friends' shows and talking about the research process, some of the stuff that I was finding as I was writing it. And hell, it took me 2 years. I remember, about a year and a half ago, I was telling everybody, it'll be out maybe in 6 months, or a couple months. I never wrote a book before. I was like, it can't be that bad. But yeah, so it's one of those things. It's like I kept finding more breadcrumbs, and I kept finding more stuff and adding. And it finally just got to the point where I was like, man, I'm probably going to find stuff for the next 10, 12 years. I have to put a cap on this thing.
I'll never forget it. I heard you. And I was like, oh my gosh, I have to talk to this guy. This makes so much sense. This makes sense. And sure enough, here we are talking about it. Everybody else must think so too.
Yeah. And one thing I thought was really cool is looking at some of the reviews on Amazon. It's only got like 5 or 6 reviews right now, but it's actually done really well. I'm really humbled. I remember telling like some of my friends and family, I'm like, it's my first book. I'm just a good old boy. I don't have some big following. If I sold 100 copies, I would be beside myself. It's been out 2 weeks now, and I've sold almost 150 copies.
Woohoo!
So I'm really, really happy about that. But some of the reviews, I've only had like 5 or 6 reviews, but almost every single one says about the same thing. And they all say, basically, if you are comfortable in your theology and what you think and what you believe, this is not the book for you.
Don't read this book. Yeah.
This book challenges all of your preconceived notions and assumptions. But if you have an open mind and are willing to accept new ideas and have your paradigm stretch and learn new things, you're going to thoroughly enjoy this book. And so that just made my heart smile. I'm like, man, I can't ask for no better review than that.
Wow. Yeah, I was really impressed because, like I said, nothing had ever made sense. And when you were describing literally how the fur or hair, however you want to explain, felt like a goat, went to the biblical passage, which I think you do it better justice. I'm just like, oh my gosh, this makes so much sense. This is kind of unrefutable if you think about it this way, because it was very descriptive.
If you let the text say what it says, you remove your preconceived notions and just let it say what it says. He came out red, covered in hair from head to toe, like a hairy cloak.
So weird. Yeah, that's so weird. And then the way he smelled and stuff, and you said he smelled like a goat, that they wrapped him in the goat to make, the switcheroo in a goat cloth. That doesn't make any sense if it wasn't pretty significant, because goats don't feel like a dog or like a fluffy sheep,
Yeah, because there's a lot of people that want to say that is, poetic language, or that's hyperbole, that he just had a good thick beard. And I'm like, well, then how do you explain the deception
At
of their
birth?
father? When Jacob was deceiving their blind father, like you said, him and his mother killed a goat and wrapped him in it like a jacket, and that his blind father felt him. And it's like, oh yeah, you're definitely my son Esau. And he says, you even smell of the field, my son.
So
and you hear about all these phantom smells and that people get with these Bigfoot experiences. And even the people that he marries, when you follow the genealogies he marries into, thanks to people like Gary Wayne, who did such a thorough job with the genealogies of the Nephilim giants, that he marries into Nephilim giant clans. And they are from the land of Sierra, whose name means hairy. And then you get just all these stories, no matter where you go. The Chinese have stories of the Yuran, this hairy humanoid creature. The Europeans have the stories of the wild man, the woodwose. You come to America, you have Bigfoot, and the Native Americans have all their different stories and legends, and you have the Sitika, who were these hairy giants. So, I mean, it doesn't matter where you go. It's just one of those universal truths.
It just really does explain. And then you put it together with a mind like mine, where I'm a medical person, and that there are actual real diseases that cause this, and it's, gone through and probably been weeded down in these people is my guess, throughout the years of breeding into different, sects of humans or whatever, different fallen angels, who even knows. But, it makes sense that you would end up with werewolf type disease, lycanthrope type situation. It's just interesting. Yeah.
And that's something I never looked into. And when I done this, because the book, it's multifaceted, and I done that to try to give a good 30,000 foot view of everything, to try to cover all the bases. So I lay out the wild man traditions to just kind of start the book. And I talk about all the stories and legends from Europe and China and the Americas, and what the Native Americans, their names for it and all this stuff. And then I introduce Esau to show you the similarities to him in these different stories. And then I kind of go into the science, how science defines it in the medical terms. And that's something I had never really looked into. And it was just eye-opening, because this is all, defined scientifically and medically. And I didn't know, but when you are in the womb, we are all covered in hair from head to toe. Yes,
we are. Lanugo. It's called Lanugo.
Yeah, Lugano or something. Yeah.
Yeah.
And at a certain point, your DNA, or whatever you want to call it, just tells your body to shed that hair. And some people have, I don't know, genetic blocks or malfunctions, and they don't shed these.
Yeah, my uncle was born very premature, and when you are born premature, that hasn't kicked in yet. And so he was born covered in white, blonde, because we're light people, white hair everywhere. And my grandma had these pictures of him, and she's like, they handed me this little 4-pound baby, but it was all covered in fur, and it looked really funny. Yeah. And he was reddish, because he does have a reddish tint to his skin, like the rosacea type situation, but not as a baby. He was a little reddish, I assume, because he's fair, but it was funny. It took 2 weeks to fall out, she said, and when it did, she was happy, because she was worried at first. She was like, oh, what is happening?
Yeah. So, yeah, I mean, that totally blew my mind. And they call it hypertrichosis. And then, when I got to looking at that, I started looking at historical figures. So then in the book, I have an entire chapter of, historically documented people. So I got their names, the times of where they lived, and their life stories. One guy was Luis Gomez, I think's what it was, and he was from Europe, and he was basically sold to one of the kings over there as a present to be in his court as entertainment.
Okay.
But the king fell in love with him and loved him just like a son, and raised him as like a prince. And all the paintings of him, because he was well documented, that he was dressed just like a nobleman. He was sent to the finest schools. He was trained to be a lawyer. And just lived the life of basically of a prince, and the king loved him. And so he was one of the fortunate ones, because most of the people that were like that were either killed, persecuted, or enslaved and put in freak shows. And that's where you get the wolf man and the bearded lady. They were, you know, put on showcase, and people paid money to see these, you know, quote unquote freaks.
Yeah.
But when the prince died, he loved him so much, he wrote in the will that he would get a piece of land and an estate, and he got his own castle. They arranged him a marriage with a woman, and they ended up having like 4 or 5 kids, and 2 or 3 of them ended up getting this genetic defect too, and they were girls. So they were little, you know, wolf girls.
Wolf girls.
And,
oh, man.
Yeah. And they're actually paintings of these little girls too that they have. And they say that this is where the story, The Beauty and the Beast, got its inspiration from, was from this Luis guy marrying this woman.
That's so interesting. I have not heard that before. I knew there were cases, documented cases, but this is so interesting because it pulls together a piece of the universe that we don't always fathom. And again, it goes back to biblical reference, you know, again, gives another piece of history from the Bible that says, you know what, this is real, you know. And I think that's so important for people to see, because a lot of times it's hard for us to wrap our minds around history in general, let alone it's always construed and messed up, and you never know. And then Bible, you know, it's even harder. I think it's so important that people see real stories. So I think that's good that you've, you know, searched this out and found real, like, here it is. This is real. These are paintings. This is a person. This is their line, their lineage, blah, blah, blah. I mean, it only makes sense. But like you said, we shove it under a rug of like, I don't think we can deal with this, you know?
Yeah. And I got pictures in here, which I didn't go with the color. I just went with the black and white, the printouts. But there was one, here it is, and this was a modern picture. This was from a newspaper article. And look at this little girl.
Wow.
I mean, she looks like
a
something
recent
from Teen Wolf.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, so yeah,
That's
I mean,
so
this is a
weird.
real thing. And you can imagine in ancient times, when people like this were born, that they would have been labeled, you know, demonic seeds. You know,
Oh, for sure.
Been killed or threw out into the wilderness for the bears and wolves to eat, you know?
That's scary. But ultimately, you're always going to get somebody that presents like, okay, like you said, only some of the kids got it, you know, and some of the kids didn't. So ultimately, you're always going to have a couple kids pop up with this later on, you know, even if you threw out the ones that had it at birth. They probably wouldn't pass it on nearly as much as 2 recessives together, I would imagine. But that's just my
thought. The science going through it was it tended to go to the females more predominantly.
Oh,
and that proves true even with the Luis Gomez guy. He passed it to his daughters.
Okay, it must go on the X chromosome of the man, right? Like the Y.
Maybe, I don't know.
X, Y, Y. No, they're Y. So I have to look at it again. But anyway, in genetics are fascinating. You know, the men only carry 1 from the female. She gets an XX, and the males get an XY, but they only have 1 X to give. So if it's affected on the X, it's going to present in a girl, whereas a boy, maybe half as much. I mean, because they still get a Y, you know, and that's also where you get some of these other rare genetic diseases that we see and, you know, we can't explain. I mean, it's just like, oh, well, that happened, whatever, forget about that, you know, put the baby in the jar and fill it full of formaldehyde. That's honestly what they did with a lot.
Sounds bad, but that's the truth.
Yeah, sad. Pickled punks, that's where, you know, unfortunately a lot of stuff ended up, you know, in science. People.
I've not done like a reading out of this on anybody's show yet, but if you want, I think this would be cool to share.
Yeah, let's do it.
because one of the stories that I had found was crazy, and it involves a wild man in the British Isles, a noble ruling family, Nazi Germany, and a conspiracy with a crazy hospital.
With all of the recent changes in the political and financial markets, there has never been a better time than right now to invest in silver and gold. When governments simply print billions of dollars in paper money in hopes of solving financial shortfalls, you know that it is time to buy and hold assets of true and lasting value. Free information is available to you right now by calling 888-747-3309. Whether you are a new investor or you're interested in preserving the value of your retirement accounts, we make it easy for you to make smart decisions for your financial future. The specialists at Cornerstone are here to serve you, work to satisfy your retirement goals, and communicate with respect. Call us right now at 888-747-3309. That's 888-747-3309. Or visit us online at cornerstoneassetmetals.com. That's cornerstoneassetmetals.com.
I highly encourage you, take some of your 401k, 20-30% of it, and invest into hard, tangible assets that you can hold in your hand that will only increase in value. And be sure to click the link below, and when you go sign up, tell them that Doc Brown from Prometheus Lens sent you. See you guys.
This sounds great.
Yeah,
I'm like,
got all the ingredients.
It's all the check marks. Yeah, all the check marks. Heidi's definitely interested.
Let's see. Maybe chapter 2 or 3.
Awesome. Yeah, I love stuff like this just because, like you said, your narrative, it opens your mind, right? Like,
yeah.
And as it should. I mean, we all have to deal with things that are uncomfortable sometimes. We have to know what's happening out there to understand it all. So, in my thoughts, anyway.
Yeah.
Better the devil you know.
Too, with you, even like the traditions, you see this, like with Krampus.
Yes.
Was this hairy, wild man that was, I think, looking back at these characters. And then the Mathones down in Sardinia, they don't even remember where this come from. They said that they just practiced this tradition as far back as archaic times, and they can't even remember why, but they still do it.
They do it.
During the winter solstice, the men covered themselves in black goat fur and then strap copper bells to their back. And they dance and parade through the streets and shake these bells and chase women and try to capture women to have their way with them. And the children that are, quote unquote, coming of age at this time to prove their bravery have to run and jump through a huge bonfire. So, I postulate in the book that is this a callback to, Esau's line interbreeding with these Nephilim giants, who were these hairy, quote-unquote, men that practiced sorcery and necromancy and that were passing their children through the fires of Molech.
Wow. Well, that makes so much sense. Yeah, that does make sense. And people have a hard time fathoming that this is really things that happened. We're not just speculating. These are things that happened in history. If you didn't know anything about the Bible, you would still find these child sacrifices and different things going on in culture, in history, wherever you look. Like he said, they don't even know why. They have no idea why they do it. So it still remains. And I've always postulated that obviously something with ceremony breaks through the veil and into the next realm, because I think we're in a realm situation. But however people want to think of it, the line, the veil, the realm, whatever you want to think of, that must work or mean something, or else people wouldn't continuously do it, right? The Mormons would do ceremonies. Yeah, exactly. It has to break through. It has to matter, to my opinion anyway.
Yeah, even to
Yeah.
the Christian altar. I mean, when you look at the altar, I mean, what does it say on the front of that altar? Do this in remembrance of me.
Right. Right.
That's what
Yep.
these rituals are for.
It's and it matters. People always say to me, "Well, why does it even matter? Like, why does that even matter?" And I'm like, "It must matter. Look at how vehemently people fight to keep their tradition. Look at the Native Americans. Look at the Mormons. Look at the people that literally went to war with the nation, like, of keeping their practices, right?
Yeah.
It doesn't make any sense. If not, I mean, must mean
Yeah.
a whole lot."
Yeah, 100%. Well, I finally found it after digging. Let's see.
Awesome.
It's okay. It's got the subtitle says British Conspiracy. It says, I try my best to give credit where credit is due. I read lots of books and listen to a lot of podcasts. It's hard to remember where I hear and read some of these things written in this book. I mentioned earlier a book, Wild Man by Nick Redfern. This book is a great read on the wild man. There is one fascinating story in this book that really stood out to me. It involves an elite ruling family, a wild man, a possible werewolf, an insane asylum, a grand conspiracy-style cover-up, and Nazi Germany. All great ingredients for an epic tale. This was in Chapter 10 of his book entitled The Tragic Tale of Patient X. This story is from wild man enthusiast John Dones. Before we dive too deep into the story, a bit of background on Mr. Dones. John was born in Portsmouth, England, August in 1959, son to the explorer and colonial service officer J.T. Downes, who wrote several books ranging from African history to dialects. His mother was an author also publishing several collections on Nigerian folklore. If you can say curiosity, the arts, and adventure was a family trait. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree, as the old saying goes. John is what we would call a modern-day Renaissance man. Some of his titles and interests include, but not limited to, naturalist, cryptozoologist, author, editor, filmmaker, poet, novelist, activist, journalist, and singer-songwriter. He is the current director of the Center for 410 Zoology, and this is a man who has dedicated his life to the strange and unexplained. I felt some background needed to be given before this story was to be laid out. This story takes place in Britain around World War II era. This was an account told by John Downes around the 1980s. The person telling John this account was a retired insane asylum guard, and this story came out over a few pints at a local pub. According to the British government's own records, this asylum was known as Western Counties Idiot Asylum. Not too politically correct, huh? This institution was opened in a house with 2 acres of land in Starcross back in 1864. This was a rented property by W.R. Courtney, the 11th Earl of Devon. He was also its first president up until 1904. By 1877, it had grown into a much larger facility and expanded the land to 7 acres. Its name was later changed to Western Counties Institution of Starcross. According to John's account, one night at the pub, by chance, he struck up a conversation with an old man. This man was the retired security guard from that facility. He told John an incredible story over a few pints. He said while working there, he worked alongside a man who served as security during World War II. This man was now dead, but he went on to tell John a story that would make for a great novel. This gentleman went on to defend the integrity of his now deceased co-worker. The man talked about how he was a family man, a Christian man who never lied, giving examples of how he was an honest man and had no reason to lie. The old man explains to John that his co-worker told him about a night when a Nazi plane was shot down in the woods near the hospital. During this time, it was common for Nazi planes to crash or be shot down in this area. One night, this guard seen a plane crash in nearby woods and went to investigate. The old man recounted the story. It was a regular night watch when he saw the plane crash into the woods, and it excited him. He grabbed his gun and charged into the woods to find the plane crash. He went on to explain the hospital's land was joined against a local farmer's land who recently lost his son in the war. The farmer had took to drinking heavily to cope with the loss of his son. The farmer also seen this plane crash in the nearby woods. The farmer, who was also drunk, couldn't pass up the opportunity to possibly avenge his fallen son, grabbed his shotgun, and went alongside the officer on the hunt. While in the woods on their way to the crash site, they stumbled across a tall humanoid creature. This thing was large, covered in hair from head to toe. Without hesitation or warning, the drunk farmer shot the beast, dropping him to the ground. The officer, upset, screamed at the farmer. They ran up and grabbed the beast, who was still alive, and they rushed this hairy wild man back to the hospital grounds. The beast was badly wounded, but he was still alive. Amazed at the old man's story, John sat there in awe as he described this creature. He said it appeared human in every way, that the beast, had 5 fingers, 5 toes, human facial features. It was just covered in hair. When the nurses and staff tried talking to it, it never spoke back. It just moaned and whimpered. The officer returned to his post, and a few hours later an unmarked van with 2 men in uniform in the front seat pulled up. It's still in the early hours of the morning before sunrise. One of the men got out of the back, was wearing a white lab coat. The 3 men pulled up to the front door and walked up like they owned the place, and said to the old man. Before the officer could address them, the head of the hospital stepped out, meeting the men saying, "Right this way, follow me." The old man said the one with the lab coat went inside, while the 2 uniformed men questioned his co-workers. The men in uniform spoke with everyone involved and told them to never speak of this event again. Then they took the hairy wild man, loaded him into the van, and drove away, never to be seen again. Over the next few months, John pounded the gentleman for more information, but he refused to talk about it again. At first, he told John that he was drunk, just spinning tales. John didn't let up on him. Weeks later, he admitted he had made a mistake telling him the story. His co-worker swore him to secrecy, and he shouldn't have said anything. He went on to tell John that he was dying of lung cancer, and he had to get it off his chest, but didn't want to talk about it anymore. A few months later, the gentleman died. John thought that the trail had went cold. Something told John there was something to this story, and he went digging. In the early weeks of 1983, John was given access to the Starcross Hospital records. He found records of an elite family who he kept unnamed, that had several family members that were admitted to that hospital, all of them with a particular abnormality. This abnormality reached back over a century, and one stood out to him, an older lady known as Winnie. To the staff, Winnie was a member of this elite family. Winnie was admitted at the age of 13 for sleeping with the stable boy and becoming pregnant. This was before World War I. She was forcefully given an abortion and confined to the hospital for the rest of her life. The files John found revealed a number of family members had been diagnosed with Wolfman syndrome. Although many members of Winnie's family had been diagnosed with this disease, there were no records of any of them being in the facility after World War I. At the time of John's findings, this family was still a very predominant family in the Devon area. This may explain why the old man from the pub refused to go deeper into the story. Members of this family had also been on the governing board of the hospital. Was these accounts scrubbed from the hospital record to protect this family? Or did they just start taking care of these individuals at home for privacy's sake? John began to ask himself, could this be the truth behind the old man's story from the pub? Was this hairy wild man shot in the woods a member of this elite family that escaped the family's care? We will never truly know. In my opinion, all signs point to yes. They had records of this family on file having this condition. Then suddenly they disappear from the record. Then one fateful night, a hairy wild man is shot in the woods, taken to the hospital. A few short hours later, some people show up, walk in like they own the place, take the hairy man and tell everyone to keep their mouths shut. Remember, this family ran the hospital for years and had members on the board. When this man was brought in, the family was notified. This powerful family also explains why the old man from the pub never wanted to talk about it again. Once again, it shows this is not fairy tale stuff. It's real. It's something that goes all the way back to Genesis 3:15, in my opinion.
Wow. Yeah, I mean, we just can't fathom, I guess, because I think these things have been selectively bred out, probably. And if I had a guess, look at the designer CRISPR babies they're making now. Like, if anybody has any questions about that, check out Elon's baby mama. She just did a whole bunch of chatting about that, and it's interesting. But we're talking about, they would have figured it out. I mean, if you breed animals, it's not that difficult to understand how genetics work. So they would have eventually figured this out. And I think they did for the most part. And it probably happens super rare today because of that. That's my guess. I mean, and to blow everybody's mind with a fun little fact. I don't know if you know this, but, I'm knee deep in JFK research, and I was listening about Marilyn Monroe, and they were speaking about her face, and they said she had the most peach fuzz on her face, covering her whole face, of anybody that they'd ever had on camera. And she refused to do anything but shave it down a little in certain areas because it made her look like she glowed, on the camera, because it would catch the light and she would glow. So maybe she had a little bit of that gene in her. I don't know. It was white, of course, very, very white.
That's just wild. But
weird.
When I read that in that book, that Wild Man book, that just totally blew my mind. That you got this, ruling elite class of family, and it goes back to the whole thing of the serpent seed. And Gary Wayne calls it, the dragon court. These ruling elite class draw their lineage back, to Cain. Yep. And they think that they, have this divine right to rule.
Divine right to rule. Yeah.
And they trace back to these Nephilim giants. And then you have all these hairy, quote unquote, men and, abnormalities in the bloodline. That's just wild.
It's weird. Well, and then you bring in, Nazi Germany. Were they the ones that figured out how to fix this? Or, it makes you wonder 100 other things, because this could go so many directions, right? And and then you think about okay, I know for the Mormons, they talk about their divine right to rule and having the keys to the kingdom specifically. And they're talking about the priesthood, the Melchizedek priesthood. But whenever they say this stuff, all I can think of is things that you've said or other things like Gary Wayne has said. And I'm like, this goes so much further than people realize. I think these families are all over, basically.
Yeah, I mean, it all goes back to Genesis 3:15 and the seed war and this birthright. This priestly ephod, this covering, it is, the sign of kingship and priesthood. The wire is the one given dominion.
Which is what the Mormons do. Over. The Mormons wear their garment for this reason.
Yes.
So
and that's
weird.
What they're fighting over. It belonged to Satan in the garden, and when he was cast out and thrown down, he was stripped of his position, and dominion was given to Adam, and his name means, mankind. So the priesthood and kingship dominion was given to humanity. And that explains why Satan hates you. That's why he wants you destroyed, because you now have the position and shiny crown authority object that was once his most prized possession.
Yep. And we get to judge him someday. Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean.
And now he's trying to make sure his seed line gets that back. Yeah. And that's what it's all about, because it has to be a human. And that's why Christ had to come. It had to be a human to take the dominion. And that's why even it says in the book of Hebrews, that Christ he came in the order of Melchizedek, that now that we have a priest that reigns forever, because it takes someone that is a human. This is a battle of dominion over the land deed and dominion of earth. It's all about the birthright.
I think I definitely see seed war all over these different factions that have seats at the head table. You know, we're talking about Nazi Germany. We're talking about Mormon people. We're talking about Vatican people. We're talking about royalty. We're talking about some people that still run this stuff in the shadows. I'm not talking about the forefront. Like here, look, this is the, pick the most popular name, whatever, it doesn't matter. That's probably really not the one. I mean, true gangsters don't have their name out front.
You're right.
Well, my grandpa used to tell me anyway. I was like, well, yeah. So all this hidden stuff, I think, is going to come to a head very soon, because we're going to be joined in what? Peace. It's going to be joined by peace and a dove. It's not going to be by a fist first, right? It's not. That's not how it's prophesied to be anyway. I think they all know who's what, where. They know. And the other very important religion that I'm not going to say the name of because we'll get in trouble. So it's got 3 letters most of the time, and I find it fascinating that, look, we can't even talk about certain things, and it's weird to me that they've gone to such lengths, and then you see all these things still happening. Like you said, there's all over the world, there's some people that still do things to like emanate or worship whatever this situation where they don't even know what they're doing. That's wild. That's wild. Yeah. Like, I just think it's irrefutable at that point. You have to step back, and even if it blows our minds and makes us feel some kind of way about it, I think even if you can't really accept it 100%, put it in your back pocket, right? Just
entertain
put it
it
in your back pocket. Yeah. People can't do that. They feel like it's either all or nothing, but that's not really how life is.
No. And that's something too, even with this book, because I have a chapter that is on the serpent seed, and that is a very hot button topic. And I'm not even going to lie, Heidi, I debated for a couple months even putting it in the book, because I knew it would be a divisive thing, and I knew there was a high probability that I would be ostracized for it.
Well,
and it was something that honestly I didn't believe. Yeah. I didn't believe it for a long time, because people that I had read their work and I highly respected them and trusted them didn't believe it. They laughed at it, they threw it out, and I just took their word for it. And granted, these people, I still highly respect them. I think they got a lot of stuff right. But at the end of the day, they're human. I can't put them on a pedestal like God and think they got everything 100% right. No, none of us has got it all right.
No.
And once I had a conversation with Dr. Joy Pugh on my show, and that was my paradigm shift. And I'm not going to lie, I had her on the show, and we were talking about the beast mark. It wasn't even about the serpent seed, but the serpent seed came in to the conversation, and she brought it up, and honestly, I was like, oh God, here we go, this serpent seed stuff. But I went in with an open mind, and I heard her out, and she changed my mind. But I mean, I'm not saying like right then, but she made me like, okay, that makes a lot of sense. I'm going to start looking into this myself.
Right.
And it did.
That's all we can do.
My mind.
Yeah, that's all we can do.
Yeah. And so, and basically just to kind of put it how she explained it, and she's a Southern woman and I'm a Southern dude, so that might have helped. She put it in good old boy language for me. But she was like, in the Garden of Eden, it's we're told that Eve bit this apple, and that was the rebellion, and she said, and then I got older and got to reading, she said, there is no apple. There's no apple in the story. And she said, it just says that they partook of this tree, and then they cover their private parts. And she said, now, Justin, she said, just kind of paint a picture for you. She said, my mother was really strict. I wasn't allowed to have sweets before supper. We always kept cookies in a cookie jar above the refrigerator. She said one day Mom was cooking and she took off into the living room to do something, and me and my sister thought we could sneak up there and steal a cookie real fast and get it ate before she came back. She said, long story short, she came in and caught us eating a cookie. You know what we done? She walked in the room and we covered our mouth. She said, because that's where the sin was. That's where we transgressed. That's what we wanted to hide. So that's what we covered. We covered our mouth. She said, so they partook of this tree and they covered their private parts.
All right.
And then she said, this was old Mosaic law, eye for an eye, tooth for a tooth. She said, we're told God is the same today, yesterday, and forevermore. You can look at all of his judgments and you can gauge his judgments for the rest of, humanity. And it always correlates with the crime. She said, it's usually you get the opposite of what you're trying to achieve. She said, so what's the cursings of that event? She said, Eve is cursed with painful menstrual cramps, painful childbearing, and pain of child labor, and her seed is cursed. And then the serpent's seed is cursed. She said, all of the cursings have to do with sex, Justin.
Well, and it never goes into detail. Yeah, it never. I mean, it's not going to break it down like crass, in the Bible. Oh, I lost you.
Yeah, hang on a second. My camera's been doing weird stuff.
You betcha. No problem. But yeah, it doesn't make any sense to hide something. Like, even if you do something with your hand, what do? You hide your hand when you're little, because inherently, I feel like, yeah, that's, gonna be the situation. So interesting, very interesting. There you are.
Yeah.
And
I don't know if it's overheating.
I think you're onto
turning
it
off or what.
Yeah.
But, and then she said the name. Even the name. She said, when a mother has a child, they contemplate that name for the entire pregnancy before they finally settle on it. That's something that's really thought about. She said, and Cain's name in Hebrew, when you break it down, means acquired. She said, who names their kid acquired?
Acquired.
And then she said, Abel's name means breath. She said, why? Because he was in the image of his father, because Adam was a lifeless being until God breathed the breath of life in him. He was named after his father. Cain wasn't, because Cain was acquired.
Well, what also do we establish with children? The fruit of our loins. Right?
Yeah.
So maybe that is what he's talking about, this fruit, right? If you're talking about the fruit of our loins, you're talking about your seed back to seed. So it makes sense to me.
And that's what I was saying with this in the book, because you have that serpent seed imagery there, and you have that curse in 3:15, and it says one would bruise the head, the other would bruise the heel. And even throughout all your mythos, Hercules, Perseus, Crixus, all of these mythos, they have twins. One is a regular human, one has a divine father. All of them. So, why would this one be any different? I think they all stem from this ancient source. They're telling the same, it's just a retelling of the same story. Then when you get to the birth of Esau, this is just a few chapters away from this event in the garden and this, dragon slayer prophecy. Once again, one comes out clearly different, covered in hair from head to toe. It looks just like all these fertility gods. And it says that, Esau is actually having to physically push on Jacob's head, bruising the head to come out of the womb. And Jacob is clutching and bruising the heel of Esau. It's like, honestly, guys, this is a Polaroid picture of Genesis 3:15. Why would the author add all these little details? Because he's pointing you back to Genesis 3:15. And all the ancient writers, all the ancient lore, Louis Ginsburg and his Legends of the Jews, the Midrashes and Targums of Jonathan, they all point at this serpent seed. And there's just no way around it.
I think that anytime we get books that can help us, like your book, like Gary Wayne's book, like even extra canonical books, you know, the Book of Enoch, all these things that people don't want to read or have been pressured not to look into. Why? Because of the agenda with that, right? There's an agenda there. There's a reason why. So,
and I tell people too, you know, I mean, I know that the stuff I talk about, you know, I mean, it's stretching, it's mind stretching, but you don't have to take my word for it, because one thing I really pride myself on is using the Bible as the foundation. So anything I talk about in this book, I'm not just saying, this is in John chapter 4, verse 3. No, I copy, paste, put John chapter 4, verse 3 in there, and I put in italics or bold the thing that I'm talking about, and then come underneath it and describe, hey, this verse you just read, this is what I'm talking about, and it ties into this verse, and then boom, copy paste the other verse I'm talking about. I mean, I make it so simple. You don't even have to pull out your Bible to check me. I check me for you in real time.
that's wonderful. So once again, you guys check him out. Check out this book. Please leave a review for the book. If you do check out the book, it means a lot, because it helps the algorithm on like how good he circulates. And is it on Amazon? I'm assuming.
Yeah.
So that it pops up more, and also on both of our podcasts, because I don't know about you, but I am heavily shadow banned to the point where I now have people that watch me saying, how does this not have more views? And I'm like, welcome to my life.
Yeah. Yep. Our subject matter.
It's just hard. Yeah. But we don't give up. I'm no quitter. It's not a quitter.
Rehab's for quitters.
That's right. All right. Well, much love, everybody. And as always, God bless. And we'll catch you guys on the next one. Bye.